All right, now let's look at employment law, and lawyers in fact reporting an increase in the number of cases of employers conducting inquiries and investigations in relation to the conduct engaged by their employees over the past couple of years, when of course many were working from home. Now it seems that COVID past has not been forgotten by many organisations. To tell us more, Joydeep Hoare from People and Culture Strategies joining us now. Joydeep, good to catch up again. Now this is intriguing.
Thank you.
What's going on? What is it in particular that these organisations are looking at, and the behaviour of employees when they're out of the office?
I think what we're starting to see, and it's been very interesting in the last, probably I'd say 6 to 8 weeks, how we're starting to see a number of trends. You may recall last time we were speaking about how, asking the question around whether employees have perhaps forgotten how to behave with each other when they've returned to that physical workplace. Another trend that we are starting to see is a number of employers conducting investigations and inquiries in relation to things that have transpired in a range of areas over the last 2 years, in a context where I think the recurring theme is that a number of the employees who are at the centre of those investigations and inquiries probably didn't think that they would be subject to that kind of scrutiny, either because of the way in which they were working at that particular point in time, being a bit removed from the purview or oversight of their employer, or just because they thought that there were so many other things going on that somehow the rules would be relaxed, or another mindset is that, well, somehow this new return to work that has started to happen in the last couple of months has represented, a line in the sand, and therefore anything that's happened in the last 2 years is not going to be looked at. And that has proved to be far from the case. And we're right in the middle of conducting a number of investigations on behalf of clients as we speak, which involve issues that have transpired over the course of the last 2 years. So they're not things that have just happened in the last few weeks. They're things that might have happened midway through last year, which might relate to expenses being incurred in breaches of organisational policies, certain communications that might have taken place between team members, allegations of bullying and oppressive behaviour by senior leaders towards other people that are now being the subject of complaint, because there seems to be an environment where you're going to get more traction if you do make a complaint about it. So that's the context.
And what's the reach do employers have in this regard? How far can they go back, and what powers do they have to actually take action?
Yeah, so unlike what might be the case if we were dealing with criminal type conduct, where there might be some limitations, or even formal court cases where there might be some statutes that limit the time period, in an employment context there are no such limitations. So theoretically an employer, if it so wants, can go back to the beginning of someone's employment to scrutinise aspects of their conduct. Certainly what we're seeing is that employers are not taking the approach, and in fairness I don't think they should, of saying, well, we understand that the last 2 years may have been challenging and therefore we're going to be a bit more forgiving about breaches of our policies or procedures or rules that we've established. Far from it. I think employers are almost using that line of inquiry, whether it's an investigation or some other form of looking into inappropriate or allegedly inappropriate behaviour by staff members, as a reminder to their people that we do expect that our rules are going to be complied with at all times, regardless of whether there might have been a pandemic, regardless of whether there might have been other distractions for our organisation, regardless of whether you're working from home or working from the office. So employers have a lot of scope, but there are a lot of philosophical and cultural issues, I think, that are also going to be interesting for employers to grapple with in this space.
Joydeep, have employers had to rewrite the rule book as far as their employees are concerned, particularly over the past 2 years when many have been working from home?
Yeah, I think employers probably didn't do enough when it came to considering what are the rules that need to be changed within that rule book. And I think the challenge for employers was that if you rewind 2 years, a lot of this it all happened so quickly. The changes in terms of where people were working, how people were working, really forced upon employers in a very short period of time. And then employers almost had to retrospectively fit issues of systems and structures into that new imposed way of working. And what didn't happen at that particular point in time was that the proper planning and consideration around how do human behaviours change when people are working differently, interacting differently, not having the same touch points with their employer and their colleagues. Because your rules need to not necessarily be thrown out the window and rewritten, but you need to think about whether the same rules are valid to be applied to employees when you just simply can't manage in the same way. You can't supervise in the same way. You're not seeing things and hearing things in the same manner that you would in the ordinary course. Now, of course, there's a bit more of a return to that, but there's been this weird period over 2 years or so where things have been allowed to happen or have happened. That's really thrown a spanner in the works for a lot of employers.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what sort of punitive actions would take place, whether we're actually going to see an increase in the termination of contracts, which would come at an interesting time, of course, when there is a labour shortage underway. So clearly corporations want to hold on to their workforce at this point, and perhaps whether that will lead to a rise of unfair dismissal cases.
Yeah, I think we are already starting to see that. And this is where there will be those challenges mounted by dismissed employees, if they are dismissed, where they'll say, well, look, I wasn't given enough guidance. There wasn't enough clarity provided around what I could or couldn't do. And all of a sudden I find myself without a job. And how is that fair? So these are going to be the kinds of issues that the Fair Work Commission and other bodies, other tribunals and commissions and courts are going to have to deal with probably in the next few months.